Good afternoon. We're back. Thank you, those of you who have rejoined us, and thank you, those of you who have rejoined us over the web. We are going to be continuing with public comments. You could turn this down a teeny bit, or I'll talk softer. They were telling me to talk louder before. We will continue with public comments, and then we will get to discussion. Thanks for the very thoughtful comments, both written and verbal, that we've had. This is an ideal way to discuss things. Okay, first we have June Lopez, General Manager of the Moulton-Niguel Water District, followed by Lisa Brown from the City of Roseville. Oh, my problem is I can't turn this thing well. Let me. Okay. Sorry, June.
Thank you for this opportunity to provide our
Oh, get really close to it.
Good afternoon. Is this better? Thank you for this opportunity to provide our comments. I'm reminded by Chair Marcus that the last time I was in Sacramento addressing a state agency was when I was working for an agency in Northern California, and I actually stood before Chair Marcus. And today I'm speaking for an agency from Southern California, South Orange County. And water is certainly a statewide concern because you never know where you're going to end up, so we all have to make sure that it's in the best interest of everyone in California. And in Moulton-Niguel Water District, we've done a lot over the years. In our service area, we have very limited supply. We're completely dependent on imported water, so we've done conservation long before it was popular. And over the years, we've achieved great results. We're well beneath our target for the 20 by 2020 target, as well as making sure that we have the most progressive and effective rate structure that even the state has identified, which is the allocation-based water rates. And it's been a really good experience for us. Weber's, as we call it, water budget-based rate structure. It's a sustained way to curtail both indoor and outdoor water use. And we've seen this to be very effective, and we've seen the reduction in water usage. And in response to the drought, we're doing more. We're expanding our conservation program with additional staffing. We've increased our water conservation budget to provide additional funding to our customers to $3 million annually. We doubled that number. And we're also restructuring our finance department to really integrate efficiency and resource management. So it's an exciting direction that we're going, and we're building on the great history. Right now, our overall water demand is met 25% with recycled water. We have a very extensive conservation program, but we know we can do more. And that's the plan going forward, is we're reviewing our rate structure to see how much we can refine it to allow for a greater expeditious response during these drought conditions or other emergency within our allocations and additional pricing signals without having to go through Prop 218, which holds up time, and also revising our conservation rules and regulation to be consistent with that rate. So we're doing a lot of things, and we're excited about what the future holds. And that's why we're here today, is we wanted to convey some of our concerns about the emergency regulation, in particular the restrictions on outdoor irrigation. And that's because right now we're doing a lot, and we want to stay on that course, and we have a lot of resource and staffing dedicated to that, and we'd be more than happy to share with the board on our progress via the monthly report or coming back here and sharing our story. But more importantly, back in 2009, we went down this path. We did enforcement. We did what was called the water policing, and we did this for about 16 months. And during that time, we issued 18,000 violations and 700 fines. And it was not a good experience. It didn't work in our area because the customers took great offense to the fact that a water agency was telling them what to do. And so we've actually seen an increase in water usage during that time because people felt that they should water on the fewer days, and it just made for a real unpleasant backlash from our customers. So part of our messaging when we adopted the budget rate structure was to tell the customer, in order to avoid these types of harsh measures in the future, having a sustained approach to curtailment of water usage is the best way way to go. And this way, you can all do your part in being responsible. And that was a message well received. And we'd hate to go back on our word and the message that we gave them. We like to stay on the course that we are, and we want to share with everyone in the industry as well as our community the great stories and the success that we hope to gain through some of these additional things that we look to do in response to the drought, and as a way of conducting our business, because we know the drought will continue, the drought will happen again. This is something that we see as part of our future, and so part of our daily operation is to recognize the value and continue to implement programs and stay proactive in making sure that we promote water use efficiency and value of water. So I thank you for this opportunity and hope that as you deliberate the rest of this afternoon, take into consideration allowing agencies to continue on the track that they are if they are showing proven success, and have additional plans in place to expand their efforts, and work with agencies to develop future implementation strategies that might work well with all the agencies throughout the state.
Thank you very much. I mean, the issue has been raised before, and you put it really well. I think the trick for us this afternoon is going to be figuring out how can we acknowledge those extraordinary efforts, and I think the allocation-based rate structures are things that will have a long last and are not an easy lift in most communities, and how to acknowledge equivalence or something like it for a community that actually has gone well above and beyond the norm. So hopefully you'll help us think through how to do that.
Absolutely.
In a way that doesn't yield a squishy situation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lisa Brown, City of Roseville, and then Martha Davis from the Inland Empire Utility District, as well as the chair of Water Reuse Legislative and Regulatory Committee, and other things.
Hi, my
Ms.
name
Brown.
is Lisa Brown. I'm with the City of Roseville, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you today. We do share your concern for statewide water efficiency, and we're really doing our part to make sure that that we uphold our contributions. We moved forward early with a mandatory drought stage, mandating a 20% reduction, and we're really doing well in meeting our
Great.
conservation goals. From what I've heard earlier today, I do believe that this is your intent, and I'm sure you're really tired of hearing this by now, but I do want to let you know that we would appreciate clarification on agency flexibility on water waste processes. We really have a very active and aggressive water enforcement process right now that's done by non-sworn officers. So that's done by a large water efficiency staff. We tie it primarily to education. So when we go out and leave a water waste notice, that we also encourage them to participate in either our business audits or our water wise house calls, so that we can teach them how to remedy the problem. We find that if we just cite them, they may turn off their irrigation to get us off their case, but then as soon as we leave and we write it off, then they're turning their irrigation back on and they're wasting water again. So if we teach them how to water efficiently, then we find that we don't have to visit their homes regularly anymore. So we encourage that opportunity to continue what we're doing. And we don't feel that police would be able to offer that same level of service that we currently do with our customers. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about gallons per capita per day. And give it in a different context. I submitted a letter that talked about this in more detail, but Roseville and other agencies have high processed water use, so they have a large industrial commercial base. And when you're using a gallons per capita number, it really doesn't incorporate, or it doesn't give you the context of what is in your service territory. And it can't just be associated with irrigation. So, City of Folsom has Intel and Aerojet, and we have large processed water uses in our service territory as well. So we would encourage you to continue to use production numbers rather than gallons per capita per day, because when you take that number out of context and compare it maybe
Right,
to
it's
some
not
other
a fair
agency,
comparison, right.
yeah, it's not a fair comparison. It can be apples to oranges.
How about if we just ask for gallons per capita per day for residential use? Generally, a water district knows what that difference is because they charge their industrial and commercial customers differently than they charge their residential users. At least in LA we did.
And we do track that. So we
And that
do
might
have
be a
that
fair
number.
comparison.
I believe it would be a better comparison than an overall GPCD usage. And we're participants in the WaterSmart program, and we do track our GPCD for our residential customers and let them know, and that's very helpful for them. So, you know, like I mentioned, we submitted a letter to the board reiterating these in more specific details, and we really appreciate your consideration and the opportunity to speak.
No, thank you very much. I saw both in the media and the letter your concern about the fines and how it would be enforced. Did Mr. Mejia's explanation earlier give you any comfort? We're not trying to supplant what you do. We would be giving you a different set of tools to use if you wanted to.
In context, I completely understand that. When our legal department reviewed the regulations, they did not come back with the same assessment. They saw infraction and they immediately thought criminal, and that it would have to be implemented by a sworn peace officer, and that was our legal interpretation. So I understand, I think, the intent of it, but I would appreciate clarification in the language.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll work on that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Martha Davis, followed by Rob Barnett from Drop Counter.
Good
Drop Counter,
afternoon.
that's a great title. Okay, sorry.
Good afternoon, board members. I am speaking today with two hats. The first hat is I'm representing the Water Reuse Association California section, and the second hat will be for the Inland Empire Utilities Agency. So starting with Water Reuse Association, Dave Smith apologizes for not being able to be here, but he is off gallivanting on vacation, the man.
It's allowed.
Can you believe? So on his behalf, I want to express our appreciation for your recognition, particularly in your resolution language about the importance of recycled water as a reliable water supply, also a very valued water supply during this drought. And I would simply second the comments that Jennifer West from CMUA made, that we would encourage you to take a look at that language and strengthening language related to encouragement of hookups of customers, because clearly in the immediate, the more people we have on the recycled water, the less potable water is being used. Second, and I think you've addressed this in part in your amendments to the proposed text of the emergency regulations, it's just the clarification that the regulations are addressing potable water reuse. I have submitted already to your staff a couple of places where we saw that potable could be inserted into the regulations just to make it consistent throughout the language, but we appreciate your having recognized that and taking care of it in part. And then finally, I want to support the comments from UKIPA about requiring reporting on recycled water. Inland Empire Utility Agency also encouraged this, and clearly this is really important information for you to have in terms of understanding how much recycled water is being ramped up by all the people who will be reporting. So unless there's any questions on the water reuse section of my comments, I'll move to the Inland Empire, switching hats.
Hopefully they won't completely disagree with each other.
I don't think they will.
We've had people present who've done that, representing
argue
different
the other
clients,
side.
and they haven't done it at the exact same day, but they have done it, you know, within a week, and it's kind of noticeable. I know that's what you're supposed to do,
And
isn't it, Tina, but
confusing,
still.
maybe? Anyway.
Okay, she gets her time back. That was,
First, I would like to respond to Board Member Moore's comments earlier this morning. For a water agency and a wholesale water supplier in Southern California, yes, we are very concerned about what's going to happen next year and the following 2 years. And we've been looking at it from the standpoint of not just what we need to do now, but how do we play out the scenarios, because we're very concerned, particularly with what's going on the Colorado River and at the same time in the Sierra Nevada. So I just, from the perspective of my agency and on behalf of Joan Grindstaff, our general manager, our point is these are fundamental, these are foundational actions that you're asking everybody to take, and we completely support them. Just on edits, on the reporting side, I wanted to point out that in your language on the mandatory water supplies under D, that you've requested the inclusion of the water provided by a wholesaler, and you've limited to treated water. And I would just encourage you to say treated and untreated, or just the water provided by a wholesaler. My agency supplies untreated water to our retail agencies, and then they treat it.
oh, okay.
So just to make sure you have a round and completed set of reports. Again, we support the reporting of the recycled water, and we also support the inclusion of the retail sales along with the production water. We think that that's going to be helpful to you, and part of the point here is to really understand how water is being used in California. So it's to enrich your understanding of what's going on out there that will help you then better understand if and when additional actions may be needed. I think the final point I'd like to make on behalf of my agency is there's been a lot of discussion today about the gallons per capita daily reporting. We're fine with it. But I think I'd want to point out, and Joe's letters that have been submitted to you on behalf of the agency, both in May and just this week, kind of comment on this point. GPCD itself is a metric that has problems. It's useful within a context, as people have been talking about today, so I wouldn't throw it out, and it's clearly what we're using for the purposes of the 20% by 2020 reduction. So it has meaning in certain places. But at the end of the day, I think our board member Diadamo is correct. The public wants to understand what's a reasonable amount of water to be used. And the strength of many of your budget-based conservation rate structures is that it's helping the public understand what that amount should be. And so our agency is encouraging you as you go forward. We recognize today it's about this emergency regulation, but we encourage you to take very seriously setting up some sort of a work group with the water community so that we can start identifying what are baseline reasonable amounts of water to be used. We already have legislation on the model outdoor landscape ordinance that sets what is reasonable for outdoor water usage, both in new developments and older developments. We already have from the 2009 legislation a estimate of what's a reasonable amount for indoor water use. We're going to need to tackle industrial, we'll need to tackle commercial, but at the end of the day, instead of having everybody saying, I reduced X percent, you still don't know whether that's reasonable. And so if we don't get started now, what if we're in a drought 3 years from now? What if we're at that crisis moment? How do we know what's reasonable? And the sooner we get started on figuring out these categories of reasonable use, the easier it will be to clarify and work with the public and communicate with the public. As Mr. Anderson said this morning, that we need to be clear about what is a reasonable amount of water to be used. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Question? Excellent, very helpful. Next we have Rob Barnett from Drop Counter, followed by Barry Nelson from Western Water Strategies.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to comment on the proposed emergency drought regulations. My name is Rob Barnett, and I am here representing Drop Counter, so apologize for my terrible handwriting.
No, it's just a cool name.
First grade level at best.
No, I've seen worse.
Thank you. I applaud the board for proposing unprecedented actions during this unprecedented period of drought in California. While these proposed regulations can help reduce waste and unreasonable use of water, as has been mentioned several times today, there remain challenges with respect to customer education as well as communication. As you know, bi-monthly paper bills are an infrequent and unclear picture of water use. Key to near-term and durable conservation behaviors is the education of water customers and personalization of their relationship with water. These water customers must first learn how much water they use and if that amount is reasonable before they are empowered with actionable tips and insights on how to conserve water. California is at the forefront of digital innovation, and its citizens are distinctly digital in their preferences and expectations. 2 in 3 now have a smartphone on which they engage with their finance and even personal fitness data. Mobile devices offer a powerful platform from which to educate and communicate with customers. Water usage information can now be viewed conveniently at any time rather than logging on to a web portal or waiting for the mail to arrive. Mobile devices also offer instant and effective communication from urban water suppliers to consumers. These immediate and cost-effective messages can alert consumers to a leak or remind them which day to water their lawn. Mobile water conservation tools represent the best available technology for educating, empowering, and communicating with consumers. Time is of the essence, and as we collectively seek a broader and more committed response to requests to conserve, I ask that our community be mindful of how inherently scalable digital tools offered by Drought Counter and others in the room can have an immediate and lasting impact on water conservation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The future is here. Barry Nelson, followed by Peter Yallis from WaterSmart. We've got a theme going in the afternoon.
You do. I'll talk about that theme. Thank you, Chair Marcus and board members. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today, and thank you for taking this, I think, unprecedented action by the board in promoting appropriately ambitious water conservation efforts in
That's right.
times
We
of...
believe it's unprecedented. If we had all of our records digitized, we would be able to know.
That's another conversation, but yes, indeed, that would be a good thing. As the reason we're here today is because your own survey has shown that we're not yet making adequate progress in doing what the governor said in his California Water Action Plan he wanted to do, and that is to make water conservation a part of the California way of life. We're not making enough progress on that front yet. There was a Los Angeles Times poll that showed very much the same thing a couple of months ago. And making water conservation a way of life is more than just replacing appliances and fixtures in our homes. Most of the conservation gains we've made in the last several decades have been that. They have been retrofitting homes and businesses. They've been improved codes and standards. Hugely important conservation gains that are basically locked into our system now. There's more we can do there, but the next wave of conservation is encouraging people to think differently about their water use and to change behavior, and droughts are when you have a chance to do that. So this is a tremendously important moment in time to move in the direction of the conservation savings we know are out there. We know we need to get people to think differently about their water use. Our opening speaker today, Mr. Anderson, did a terrific job of talking about technology and communication, and those are really the themes I'd like to hit today. You have a letter from me that has 3 recommendations I'll just cover very briefly. But all of them touch on using the tools we have today to reach the public in a way that's more effective than we could have 20 or 30 years ago, and that take advantage of the opportunity to help people change behavior, help people think differently about their water use. 3 quick points. The first is about behavioral water efficiency. You heard about that from your previous speaker. Peter Yallis is going to speak next. He'll talk more about that a little bit. This is a proven, cost-effective tool that can help water agencies very rapidly to implement water conservation programs. It's been shown to be effective around the state. You reference that in your resolution, not in the regulations. I understand the reasoning for that. I would urge you to look at that resolution and see if there's an opportunity to go a little bit farther in encouraging the use of behavioral water efficiency, which leads me to, and Peter, you'll also talk about that again in a moment, which leads me to the second point. Your previous speaker, our first speaker today, have been talking about technology. Just as 20 years ago, the high-tech industry in California stepped up and promoted efficiency and renewable energy sources, the same thing is happening today in terms of developing new water conservation technology and other new water technologies. And again, during a drought, this is a terrific time for the board to encourage water agencies. Again, you could do this in the resolution, to encourage water agencies to help develop new technologies and, where appropriate, to implement those new technologies. This is the moment when water agencies are really motivated to look for new solutions, so your resolution would be a terrifically appropriate place to do that. We really want to encourage that development of new technology. The governor has issued a couple of statements. I think in his budget statement this year he talked about encouraging the development of new water technologies. And then third is with regard to, and you've heard this a couple of times today, with regard to education and public engagement. Back to that opening theme, most of the conservation savings we're going to see in the next several decades in the efficiency arena is going to come from behavior change. And this is a moment when we can launch a much more ambitious effort to reach the California public. There are a lot of places where the state has done this, promoting seatbelts, urging people to reduce littering, especially California's anti-smoking campaign. There are a number of places where the state has stepped back and said that it was going to make a significant effort to encourage people to change behavior. I think this is a really important moment for that. In the case of smoking, that was 25 years ago when that effort started. It was largely the media. We have lots of new tools today, including the media, but including new media, what behavior science tells us about how you really encourage people effectively to change behavior, information technology. There's a whole suite of tools we didn't have 25 years ago. But we'll only change behavior if, as a state and as a water community, we decide that we want to change behavior. So again, those are our three areas where I would urge you to look at potentially strengthening your resolution. Terrifically appropriate, all three of those, as far as a response to the drought. But equally importantly, all three of those also set the stage to achieve the governor's longer-term plans of a more reliable water supply for the state. Thank you. Oh, you're off.
If it makes a funny noise, I'm going to turn this off for the moment, and maybe someone can figure it out. Do you have a sense, a number of communities have used a variety of different technical tools to be able to give individual residents a clearer picture of their water use. When we talk about the use of technologies, whether it's Water Smart or Drop Counter or any number of new ideas. Do you have a sense of what percentage of water agencies are employing that kind of technology?
You can ask Peter Yolles that. In the case of Water Smart, it's around 20 agencies in California, but Peter can give you the latest information on that. There are a few agencies that are trying to do that themselves in-house. There are also a few agencies that are doing what I would call very, very modest efforts, simply a line on the bill that will compare your use to your previous year's water
Like
use.
the star
so
on.
I think the challenge is coming up with a precise enough definition of behavioral water efficiency that you can really exclude the efforts that really aren't ambitious enough to rise to that
All right.
level.
I was just wondering whether if one of those 20 agencies that's doing a intensive job would fall into this potential equivalence. If they're already doing something cutting edge, might that be a substitute for?
It's a good question. I think the two areas that really represent a fundamentally different approach to achieving water conservation are rate structures, and there are a couple of different rate structures out there, as well as the behavioral water efficiency efforts. Those two things are very compatible. There are a number of agencies that are already and that are
doing them
looking
together
at
even.
pairing those two things together.
Okay. Well, thanks.
And my question is for you and for Peter and for the previous speaker as well, and also for Cindy. We have the Save Our Water campaign that Aqua and Department of Water Resources are doing together. It seems like promoting the electronic approach that you're or the technology approach that you're advocating is something that they maybe are pursuing or certainly might consider pursuing. And so I just want to put that out there, that if that program isn't going in this direction, it really should look at it and consider it, because it does sound like it's the future. And the future is now. I think Felicia's right.
I'll volunteer to talk with Cindy about that, and we have been. But what I want to point out is that when we used to think about educating the public 25 years ago, it was through the traditional media, and we now have a whole host of new tools. And I think it's important for us to step back and ask how we use all of those tools as part of a comprehensive strategy.
You're right. It isn't all of the above kind of a moment, and I appreciate Fran mentioning the Save Our Water SWRCB.com site. We should have said that every 15 minutes today and when all of the reporters were here. So I don't know where George is, but we should, whatever we do in all of our press stuff, we should have that really big and drive people to that website, because it actually has some really good and easy to see tips on how much water people tend to use for certain practices that are somewhat surprising, even for those of us who've been through droughts before. So
We do direct people there in the resolution.
Yes.
great. Let's just like put it sort of every other word, you know, sort of like as the game that family, like you say avocado as many times as you can, and let's just say saveourwater.com as many times
We
as
put it in
we
the
can.
footer.
In the footer, every footer, yeah, exactly.
So I would
Thank-
like to just throw a suggestion out there, food for thought for the future, and this is for Aqua and others. So on this issue of technology and gaining on technology and improvements and greater usage, I've thought for a while, because I came from the Air Board, that we should have a water program like what the Air Board has, Carl Moyer program for air quality incentives. And of course, we know all the great things that water efficiency does, but also in terms of climate change benefits. And so there's plenty of reasons for us to implement these technologies on a broad scale, and maybe even crafting a program that would provide for greater incentives for super technologies, you know, and maybe even technologies that don't exist, in order to help drive industry in the creation of these super efficient technologies. So it's an issue that I've been talking to folks about off and on, and at some point it'd be great to get a group together and maybe brainstorm about ways to do that.
That's a terrific idea. I had been thinking about the air quality analogy, but there are analogies as well in the energy arena.
Right.
We haven't developed those same sort of technology innovation, so those same sorts of policies and programs to drive technology information in the water world. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, just while we're talking about that, though, I was looking at the resolution, and I thought Mr. Nelson, SaveOurWater.com. Looking at the resolution, which is in there, oh, look, SaveOurWater.com is right there. We've touched on points 1 and 3 of Mr. Nelson already. He said it could be strengthened. I guess we could turn should into shall, that kind of thing, but I mean, it's there. But on number 2, which Board Member Diadama was just talking about, you know, there might be a place for another bullet in here about encouraging new technology. I don't see that as a problem, and if local districts can point that to their boards, that this is a legitimate investment at the local level that meets a statewide, you know, vision, I'm very comfortable with adding something along those lines.
I think that's certainly something we can incorporate into the resolution.
Great.
SaveOurWater.com.
Thank you, Counselor. Next, Peter Yellis from Water Smart Software, followed by Madeleine Glick, Director of the UCLA Water Resources Group.
Good afternoon. I'm Peter Yellis. I'm the founder and CEO of Water Smart Software, and yes, the future is now. SaveOurWater.com. And and I do commend you for taking this responsible and really early and timely action to address the drought and to protect our way of life here in California, which is so special to all of us. And I want to commend you also for doing so much on public outreach and tracking and reporting, which is crucial. And no one has mentioned that you can only manage what you measure. And I really want to emphasize that. It's so important for us to do, and I think that's the foundation for what we're trying to do with new technologies. So I wanted to talk a little bit about and introduce this new proven technology that really wasn't available in our prior droughts, and that is behavioral water efficiency. And the reason why the future is now is because we haven't had a lot of these tools which we do today, which are the proven nature of behavioral science, which is proven in the research, in research literature, the rise of cloud computing generally, which allows us to provide a low-cost, affordable way to do data analysis, and then advanced data analytics methodologies. And we've combined all those really to create a new form of conservation, which is behavioral water efficiency. So it's been proven to reduce residential water use by 5% in East Bay mud. And if all of California residences used behavioral water efficiency, we could provide enough water to supply all of San Diego every year. So this is proven. We can do it. The technology is here. And a couple points about it I just want to make. why it's important to think about today, which is, first of all, it can be implemented very rapidly. We can actually deploy behavioral water efficiency within 30 days. And it can be used with any back-end software system. So any water utility can implement this at any time.
Can you just explain for the, I'm
Yes.
sorry, and
Yes.
answering my question doesn't take from your time. Some of us have seen presentations on this. Can you, and I know I've only given you all 3 minutes, but can you explain for the folks listening what you mean?
Yeah.
Like what exactly do
What
you
it-
do with behavioral? What kind of information do you give to the consumer and what kind of actions do they take in response?
Yes, the core of behavioral water efficiency is the use of social norm-based information. And what that means is using very relevant and pertinent personal information to compare one's own water use to those of similar households with similar attributes. So that's a really important point. So people tend to change their behavior when they know that they've been compared to households with the same attributes. So we use information like the number of occupants in the household and the size of the yard and the expected what is reasonable use for that particular house based on those attributes. So the science in this tells us that the more relevant and the more personalized the information, the more behavioral response we're likely to see. So we're using the aggregation of water use information and real estate information and climate information to create that picture of how much water should be used in each home, and then providing a water score to each home based on how they compare to other homes like them. So that's sort of the core that's really engaging for people. And then once we capture their attention, then we can serve them with personalized water-saving recommendations or those that the utility wants to promote for them at that time of year. So we use that data to create home water reports to each customer that are sent out after each billing period. So we're using the same meter data that the utilities already collect. It's pretty simple, and they are each unique to each household every billing period. So each one's unique, and that's sort of the core of the technology.
Thank you.
Sure. So a couple other quick reasons why we think that behavioral water efficiency is really the way to go as one tool in the toolbox. In addition to being implemented very rapidly, it's highly cost effective. It's been proven to provide equivalent water supply at about less than $400 per acre foot. So it's very hard, you're hard pressed to find other water supplies today at such a low cost. Thirdly, it's proven to increase customer engagement and customer satisfaction. So again, the research literature tells us that the more information is provided, the more transparent a utility is to their customers, the more highly engaged and confident the customers are to believe in their utility and to be credible and trust their utility. And fourth, behavioral water efficiency is consistent with the governor's water action plan. In fact, the plan has a specific recommendation that says promote the innovation of new systems for increased water conservation. So based on that information, we have 3 specific recommendations, which we did provide in written comments to you, but I'll repeat here very briefly. The first is to implement behavioral water efficiency measures and call it out and say, yes, this is proven. It's being used by over 20 agencies in California today. In fact, we send reports out to over 200,000 homes today and process data from over 1 million homes. So the data is here and it's proven. I'd be happy to provide a demonstration or a meeting with you and your staff about that. The second is to target high residential water users. Turns out that these high users use 10 to 20 times the average amount of water. So by providing information that's about them, it's personalized to them, they're much more likely to read it. A lot of high water users don't read bills anymore. They're on auto pay, for example. But this personalized information actually cuts right through it. People do read it because it's about them. And the third is to provide personalized recommendations to each customer every billing period after each time the meter is read. So those 3 things together, we think, can really make a difference, can provide very immediate 5% water savings this year and a very rapid response to the drought. So again, I just want to commend you for taking this historic action, and I think it's really timely and important. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thanks for helping explain it to folks who didn't already know what it was. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Next is Madeleine Glick from UCLA, followed by Patrick Porgans from Planetary Solutionaries.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board, and SaveTheWater.com. SaveThatWater.com? Is that
Same
right?
our water.
SaveOurWater.com.
Thank you.
So I'm here, the Water Resources Group at UCLA is about 35 faculty across the campus that work on multiple, in between disciplines of economics, law, science, technology, to try to solve the real problems of water in California today. And we are working on many of the things that you touch on in this emergency regulation. So I wanted to bring some information to you. You know, following on to Mr. Yoles, I would say that one of the problems we have in Southern California is not that we haven't done a lot of conservation already. We have. We are leaders in recycled water. We are leaders in storm water capture. We get local water. What we don't seem to get is this drought. And I think that the reason for that has a lot to do with social norm behavior. When you ask people, people have been surveyed, if they believe there's a drought, they say no. Even those that believe there's a drought, do they think it's as bad as people are telling them? No. Why do they feel that way? Well, they see green minions. They see Caltrans has a big sign saying there's a drought emergency right next to its sprinklers going. They see parks that are still green. They see all around them the public spaces that would be their measure for what appropriate behavior is not stressed. And we have water managers that I consider heroes in Southern California who are doing their very best to substitute for imported water and are doing their best to deliver water in really amazing ways, cooperating at a level I really could not describe. But in fact, it may be too good. And it's hard. I heard all of these really good agencies testify before you today. They have it in their blood, in their cells, to deliver water. And it's very hard for them to say, we might not have any next year if we don't save it this year. So I think that one of the things I would recommend to you, I heartily support these recommendations, the resolution and the emergency regulations, but let's have the discussion about what the city's public spaces should be looking like. Let's have the discussion of doing what Australia did, which is and they wish they had done it sooner.
Right.
At a certain point, they said no watering in the parks except for with recycled water. And when they didn't have connections, they set up storage tanks in the parks so that they could save their heritage trees.
Yeah, or cisterns underneath.
Andy Lipkus is waiting to do that in LA when there's a reason to do it. So I think that with that, there's another thought that I wanted to give to you, which is in terms of the resolution language about leakage. I'm doing work on that in LA County right now. There really isn't any data available. But there is a bill that's through the Assembly, through the Senate, through the Assembly. It's AB, excuse me.
Get closer to the mic when you
I'm sorry, I'm
get
trying
it.
to find what I'm saying here. It's SB, I'm sorry, I apologize. 1420, thank you very much. And it requires what is not required right now, which is for water districts to break down their water losses so that you can look at leakage separately from unbilled, unmetered usage. That is really important. It's also really important that they are using the AWWA software. That's a uniform tool, but the bill doesn't say anything about having to submit the analysis for the software. If you did that, you would be getting a lot of information about leakage. We're looking at this in LA County because there are 100 water districts, 75 of which serve 250,000 people, which is not much in LA County, but it's a big city someplace else. And we don't think that they have the capacity to do the kind of leak repair that's necessary. We think that there are some districts that are losing as much as 30% of their water in the distribution system. We don't know that, but that's one of the reasons we're looking at it. So we think that you ought to think about how some of these very low capacity districts, not the people that are here today, how are they going to comply with this? How are they going to deliver conservation information, conservation services, recycled water? It's all very difficult for them, and we ought to have the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Porgens, followed by Mark Madison of the Elk Grove Water District.
Yes, Madam Chair and members of the board, my name is Patrick Porgens. I'm with Planetary Solutionaries, and I did submit comments to the board, which you should have read. At any rate, what I'm here to talk about briefly is the emergency ordinance, the need for it, the severity of the drought, and the implications associated with this infraction that may occur to your residential users. First of all, I understand and appreciate the fact that we're in a drought, but anybody that's going to get up here and tell me this is the worst drought we've ever had in California needs to go back and do some research. This is the 4th driest drought that we've had, and I've been here for just about every major drought that we have experienced. And what we've noted, just like this woman just said, is that the water purveyors have this propensity, we're 60% water, maybe they're 80%, I don't know. And then I should say saveourwater.org, not com.
But it is COM. They
Yeah,
changed
it should be org.
They have org, but they
Okay.
went to COM
Good,
because it
good.
functions better.
Commercial doesn't do a lot for me. At any rate, getting back into the issue, we have the data to show that even during this drought that we're in now, remember 2011 was an extremely wet year. We had 25 million acre feet of water running off just in this Sacramento Valley. What we also experienced was that in 2012, the federal government and the state government exported more water and delivered more water in that year than, it was record-breaking. The federal government delivered 6.8 million acre feet of water. That's the highest they've ever delivered in 2012, first year of the drought. Second year of the drought was 5.8 million acre feet, okay? Now, when you start talking about drying up lawns, I'm talking about drying up pistachio orchards and walnut orchards. I gave you the data previously that we increased the almonds by 440,000 acres between 2002 and 2012. That amount of water would have been roughly half of the total amount of water the Metropolitan Water District would have used annually. Okay, just to give you some perspective here. Now, if you look at where the almond market is at and pistachios and the wine, nowadays you can go in a place, I'm not a wine drinker, but you can go and buy a bottle of wine, they'll give you the second bottle for 5 cents. Oversaturated the vineyards, okay? You can't separate the urban from the agricultural component, because the agricultural component consumes about 85% of the water. M&I and industrial is about 15%. The net applied water is about 29 million acre feet. In this bulletin here, which is DWR's bulletin, which water conditions in California, okay? On May 1st of this year, we had about 15.3 million acre feet of water in storage in the Sacramento and San Joaquin Valley. I just told you what the net applied water is, okay? So when we're dealing with these drought conditions, we are generally, in a wet year, a normal year, well, it's about 60% from the surface that we're using and 40% from the ground, okay? We switch that around now. Now, when people are talking about, now in a drought, we're probably beyond 60-40 now, 60% from the ground and 60% from the ground and 40 from the surface. The concept that this is a situation that requires dire, drastic, efforts like you're proposing here today, in my mind, is unfair to the urban water users. I mean, we're already under a mandate for a 20% cut, okay, from that water package bill that we had when Schwarzenegger was here. And now, I don't know what we're talking about, if this is in addition to that 20% or not, but nevertheless, we are not going to be able to provide for water in the future if, in fact, we're going to continue to allow the unbridled growth in agriculture. See, what we're doing is we're exporting our water in our crops. And there's no place on earth that we've spent more money to develop our water resources than here in California. That's just a fact. So the idea, I came to you guys 20, 30 years ago. I said you need to develop a comprehensive drought contingency plan. We didn't have it. I came back and kept telling you this. And now we're reacting, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on a lot of different people. And it's going to get a lot of people really upset. If you have a police officer come and tell you, you got to shut your water off, and, he's giving you a ticket, some of these people, they just about had it. So you got to think about the consequences associated with your action. Now, the other thing is people are going to be paying more for conserving water, because the revenue stream for these water districts has to be met in order to pay off their debt. So I'm going to say to you that and this is based on the track record now, I don't want to make it sound like I'm saying anything personal. The enforcement track record of this board, as it pertains to its sister agencies, the Department of Water Resources and the Bureau of Reclamation, is almost nil. They've illegally exported $29 million worth of water back in that 1987-92 drought, just in 91 and 92. You did nothing. You took no action. I had 11 members of the Assembly come over here in the Senate, leading members, to tell you to enforce the law. You did. So I'm saying that this is an unfair piece of regulation that is putting an undue hardship on the urban users, and I just believe that you got to soften this one up, and you got to start taking a look and come up with a comprehensive drought contingency plan to deal with these issues, because droughts are just a part of the California landscape. That's just a fact. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Mr.
it's
Porter.
water, SWRCB.com, okay?
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Porter. Mark Madison, followed by Tom Martinez from Santa Clara Valley Water District. Mr. Madison from Elk Grove.
Well, good
Thank you
afternoon,
for your
Chair
patience.
Marcus. How are you?
Good.
Members of the board, thanks for having me this afternoon. I'm probably going to be a wet blanket here. We have concerns about this draft set of rules. Ms. Marcus, you made a comment earlier that perfect is the enemy of good. That is absolutely correct. The problem here is that these regs, as presently drafted, are far too far from perfect. We have a motto at the Elk Grove Water District, and what we say is stop, think, and do it right. I think you need to do that here. I think your staff needs more time to take into account the comments that we've heard today. There have been numerous. Our district and our customers have been very noble in their efforts to conserve water from last year to this year. We understand there's a drought. We understand the seriousness of this drought. Our customers between then and now have conserved, we're using 18.33% less water than we did this time last year. What you're asking me to do now is to thank them with a sledgehammer. And I don't think we need to do that for the agencies that are doing a really good job. We have two basic problems with the regulations as crafted at the moment. First, everybody's being painted with the same brush. Max showed a chart earlier that indicated that most of the regions in California, in fact, are using less water than they did last year. That's great. But yet, two are not, and everybody is being subject to these mandatory outdoor sprinkler limitations. I think we should rethink that. For those, again, does it apply to all? Does it apply to rural homeowners, for example? I haven't heard anything said about that today. And most notably, the enforcement provisions contained in these regulations are abundantly vague, and they really need to be clarified. And I think they need to be clarified in a way that I really don't think you can do this afternoon with a quick stroke of the pen. Who enforces them? It's still not clear. Will the districts enforce them? Or is it the cities and the counties? Or is it those that have land use authority? I'm not clear on that. Who gets fined? The tenants or the owners in the case of rentals? There's been no discussion of due process. How do we deal with challenges and protests and contests to the fines? I honestly don't know. Again, I think you need to take some time. My recommendation is that you take 30 days and you direct your staff to come back with a much more clarified set of rules based on the comments that have been received today. Again, I'm not suggesting that we postpone this long. 30 days won't kill us, but I think you may craft a much better set of regs than what you have before you this afternoon. I would also suggest that you not brush off the comments. You heard some good comments today, like those related to health and safety concerns and pressure washing, for example. But there are numerous comments that I think need to be reflected, and I'll list off a few. There were concerns relative to recycled water, the retail and wholesale issue, the enforcement, notably the issue of the endowment of authority as mentioned by Janet Goldsmith. Excellent comment. Everyone is being treated the same. The pressure washing comment, health and safety concerns, the rural requirements, which are unclear, property owners versus tenants, the practical applications of enforcement, which we have serious concerns about. And I think in general, the approach is heavy-handed. So again, my request to you today is to stop, think, do this right, direct your staff to take 30 days. We're happy to help. And let's do this right together. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Martinez, followed by Peter Brostrom from DWR.
I won't be a wet blanket.
You can be whoever you want
Right
to
on.
be here.
Tom Martinez, Santa Clara Valley Water District. Santa Clara Valley Water District provides wholesale water, flood protection, and environmental stewardship to the greater Silicon Valley. The district appreciates the state board's efforts to further reduce water use throughout the state. Wanted to take a moment to say a couple of things that are already highlighted in our letter. Some of the things I'll leave out if you don't mind. Well, most of our comments are in the letter. I wanted to point out a couple. One in particular, the baseline. We are pleased that the state board is now using 2013 as the base year for estimating water use reductions. We do recommend that when calculating the reductions, January be excluded since it was exceptionally warm, dry, and there was no call for reduction at that time. Another thing I'd like to point out is we'd also like to request that language be inserted to expand or to give enforcement capabilities to special districts.
Do special districts not have it now?
We could say pretty please. And
Oh, you don't have the ability to do fines?
We don't have those police powers that
Okay.
you've heard about in the papers or the news. I'd finally like to reiterate something that's been brought up several times regarding recycled water, which is an important part of our arsenal in Silicon Valley. And also let you know that this Friday we are opening up our
that's right.
Advanced Treated Water Purification Center, which will bring online 8 million gallons of highly treated, purified, quality water. And if you are interested, I could extend an invitation to you. And I'd also like to close by saying thank you for your time and your efforts again.
Right. And thank you. Congratulations on that facility. Sounds great. And our final speaker is Peter Brostrom from DWR. Nice to see you.
Good afternoon. I'd just like to provide some clarification on the population calculation.
Oh, thanks.
I'm Peter Brostrom. I lead the water use efficiency section at DWR and have been the lead on the 20 by 20 program and the urban water management plans. We're just finishing up the review of roughly 400